Hi, everybody. Hello. Hey, good morning, Mrs. Anyway, it's like your kindergarten, right? So I was told that I'm not introduced, so I'm introducing myself. So this is fantastic, okay? I'm Dr. John LaPook. I'm the point guard backup for the New York Knicks. Is that anybody? Anybody? I'm 6'2", but I play 5'10". Anyway, I'm Dr. John LaPook. I'm a professor of medicine at NYU Langone Health. I do internal medicine and GI. I'm the chief medical correspondent for CBS News, so I do 60 Minutes and Sunday morning and evening news and morning and all that stuff. I used to do radio. Now there is no CBS radio. And I started something called the Empathy Project, which was basically in 2013. It's to use Hollywood-quality short films to teach clinicians in training and others to be more empathic and sensitive and competent, and then to empower patients to demand that. And that was 13 years ago. We now have a Center for Empathy in Medicine at NYU Langone Health, and we have empathy fellows, and we have Jen Adams here, who is the director, the Frankfurt family director of the Center for Empathy in Medicine. We're actually doing research on empathy, and there's all sorts, and it's very relevant to Judith Faulkner, who I will now parenthetically, I wanted to spend the rest of the time talking about me, but I think I'll turn it to Judy Faulkner, who I've admired for many years, even though most people, I think, in the previous introductions that I've been reading about say, she's, the most important person you've never heard of, okay?
And I wish it stayed that way.
Yes. So, and I'm going to ask you, why are you up here? Because you are famously shy of media, but I'm so happy that you're here. Also, so Judy grew up. For those of you who don't know, in 1979, she was in her basement, and she started developing, she was a math major, grew up in Cherry Hills, New Jersey. I have to say that her father was a pharmacist and was a candy store also in the same place, or just a pharmacist?
It was one of those soda fountains.
Soda fountains. And
yeah.
My grandfather also, who was from Jersey City, also had something like that without the pharmacy, but they did sell cigarettes and they had a telephone. And her mom was a peace activist who was part of a group that won the Nobel Prize in 1985 for their work about nuclear disaster. And in her 80s, what happened to her?
Well, I have a Nobel Prize certificate with her name on it, which is really neat. I have that outside my room next to a little sign that I found somewhere that says, I never paid attention to what my mother said until I finished college and she was older, or something.
Oh, that's good. Was it Mark Twain or some of these? Like when I was 15, my father didn't know anything. By the time I reached 20, it was amazing how much he learned in those 5 years.
The same concept.
Same idea. So, and then she went to jail in her 80s.
She started the South Jersey Peace Center on her own and got really vilified for pushing against the Vietnam War. Then when 2 of her children moved to Portland, she and my dad followed, and at that time she joined Physicians for Social Responsibility. Any of you know that one?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And she was the executive director of the Pacific Northwest, which is why they called her in when they got the Nobel Prize. She was so excited about that. So.
And she went to jail for
Yes,
police.
well, she was protesting at a nuclear arms site, and she was carrying this sign and walking around. And she's always had very good relationships with the police, with soldiers. She says she hates war, but she loves the soldiers. And I always thought that was a very good thing to say. So anyway, we have a picture of it. You see the police person writing things down, and her right next to them. They were smiling at each other, and it's a
and she's
happy
correcting the spelling.
And so I think she went to jail for a day.
Oh my God! But badge of honor. And so she started something in 1979. The germs of she was a math major, computer programmer, and she started writing what became EPIC.
I started in the early 70s.
Oh, so...
Didn't start the company till 79
okay.
because people kept asking me to start it, and I kept saying no, and no, and no, and it took years before I said yes.
Got it. I should just say, because it'll inform the questions I'm asking you, that I went out into practice in 1986, and I was looking for software to run my office, and sort of came up empty in my search. Up there was, I think, the System 36 IBM that was $1 million. So I started writing my own system, and the tiniest little, it was called Probity, ran this, and the same thing, I was running it in my own office. People would look in and say, ooh, can I use that? Because this is basic stuff. I said, I'm not going to sell it to you. I'll give it to you. If I form a company, then you can buy it. And then, fade out, fade in. 13 years later, I ended up selling it to a company that became WebMD, that ended up buying WebMD, and then promised my wife I would never do business again, because it was the hardest thing. You don't know fear until it's the end of the month and you don't have payroll. So, which brings me to, you famously, you have these 10 commandments. I only know 3 of them. Maybe you can give us the other 7, but one of them is don't accept any venture money.
Yep.
The software has to work.
Yep.
And what's the third one?
Never go public.
Never go public. Okay, so so here you are, public, and tell us, for those entrepreneurs out there, and also just people who are like, how did you do this? And personally, I know how hard it is to start a business. When I went out to speak to people about the company, some well-known businessmen said to me, why do you want to start this? And I said, well, I really want to do something for people, and I want to be able to have people run their offices, and this is neat. And he goes, wrong answer. The reason to form, that's why you do it for yourself. The reason to form a business is to make money.
I disagree.
So I figured you would, and that's the starting point of why you did it.
3 reasons why CEOs form businesses. Reason number 1 is just what you said, to make a lot of money. Reason number 2, and I've heard them say this sometimes, is they want the pride of running a company that's on the stock exchange. And reason number 3 is that they have a product that people want, and they want to get it to the people. And those are, I think, the third one often, but you can't be stupid about money. So our saying at Epic is do good, that's first, have fun, that's second, make money to be here tomorrow, that's third. But it's in that order.
So we have 32 minutes left before the Q&A, and what I want to do is take a third of it to just bring you on your journey, and the next 2/3 of like, you have all this data, what are we going to do with it, what's interesting? I want to look forward. There have been interviews where it's sort of looking backwards, and just so people know, what is the scale of it now? How many people in the world use Epic? You clearly are the biggest system in the United States. What percentage?
We're supposedly the biggest system in the world now. Partially because the United States is so big.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many.
Because I read 330 million users, and maybe that came out of your Cosmos database.
Cosmos has about that many de-identified patients.
So that's a database which
research.
I didn't know about, but is amazing, which is that she's accumulated over all these years. They've accumulated all these years. All of these records that are de-identified, and like you can do stuff with that data. The first.
If you share the data with us, then you have access to it.
Right.
So only those health systems who submit the data to us, they can study it, and they're publishing about a report every week or so.
And I want to get into what that is, and I'll start off with an anecdote, and that you can then take off on, which I think will lead to like why you did this and how you did this. So it's 1982. I am a resident at Columbia Presbyterian, and I know his name, but I'm not going to say his name, lost the chart on a patient. Now, you cannot lose the chart in 1982 because it's everything. This is back then. We had x-rays and charts that we needed to present on rounds. We would literally hide the x-rays in our locker so that we could then take them and present them on rounds, and other people would be looking for them. I didn't really do that. We're being recorded? Yes. No, we did that, okay? So that, because they would say, where's the chest x-ray? And I go, I don't know where the chest. So we are looking for 2 hours for the chart that has disappeared on this really important patient that has come in very sick, and we're going to need to present it. Where did we find it? On the oncology floor, in the refrigerator. I kid you not. So this brings us to oh my gosh, electronic records. I don't have to call. We called it hematology hold back then, because you'd call hematology to get the CBC result, the complete blood bank, and she'd go hematology hold, and you wouldn't get the result.
Well, the other place records were at homes
Homes.
and in cars. And so, yes.
So
and then
take it
often when you got it, the handwriting was hard to read. So,
Qui moi? So
in fact, I know somebody, one of the doctors, got a call from a pharmacist because someone was trying to fake his name on a prescription, but it was legible, so they knew it wasn't his.
Possibly be you. So with that as a background, take it from there. You're doing this coding. You're starting it. How did you start it? What are the frustrations at the beginning? You didn't want to go too fast. You don't want to go too slow.
You mean
you're starting at
when Epic got started?
Yes, when Epic got started.
Well, we had I was half-time, and I had a morning assistant and an afternoon assistant. I was probably working time and a half because I was also working for the UW, which didn't last too long because I couldn't do all of that. And just one of the things we had no idea how to do was sales. And then we figured out how you do sales. People call you, and that's how you do sales. So that's still how we do sales. We have about 15,000, 16,000 staff. I have read that tech companies typically have 10% in sales. So that would mean we'd have 1,600 salespeople. We have 8 worldwide. And they answer the calls that come in. So we have forever just done sales we take phone calls.
So you have 15,000, it's 10%, 1,500 is 10% of...
15 or 16,000, somewhere in there.
15,000.
We had 350,000 applicants this year for jobs. We hired about 1,000.
And you told me so we had a little Zoom before this, how do you choose, you have this like testing
Yeah, well...
for you people looking to hire?
Should I tell them about the first person I ever tried?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I hired a programmer, and he thought he was a great programmer. And because he believed it, he was able to convince me because he was telling me the truth as he knew it. I hired him, and I gave him his first assignment. And he looked at me and he said, "No human being could do this." And I said, "I could do it in about 4 hours." And so clearly there was a problem. Well, my son was maybe 15 at the time, and he was home writing games on the computer while I would be writing code for Epic. And I knew he was good. And he would go around the state in contests and win them all the time. So I asked him to write a test for us to hire programmers by, and he did. We paid him $5. We used it for 18 years and hired all our programmers with that. But then what we started learning was tests are good for lots of things besides just hiring programmers. So if you join Epic, you go through a whole battery of tests. Now, some tests are more English and essays and words, and some tests are logic and math and stuff like that. And what we find is that for our environment, those people who do really well on the grammar and word side, but really flunk the math logic side, they are what we would call the articulate incompetents. And we don't hire them. Now, that might not be true for every area, because some areas need the words, not the math. But for us, we needed the math. So we still hire by that way. We have about 10 different tests we give. Some are the logic, some are the English, some are psychological, some are speed. There's a 2-minute test, a 10-question test, an out-of-the-box test where the questions are weird and we want to know if you can jump to those different things. So we give a lot of tests.
So I'm mindful of the clock because I really want to make sure that we get to the future and what you're doing with this data. But I'm going to ask you one question before we do that, which is, and we've talked about it beforehand, which is, talk about being a woman and what that meant as a young entrepreneur and in a world that didn't, especially when you were doing it, didn't necessarily invite a woman to, say, come on in, join us.
Well, I remember going to what was called the Mumps Users Group meeting. That was the language we were programming in. And there might be 200 men and 3 women. What I knew was that every single man knew the 3 women. The 3 women did not know every single man. So it was pretty easy to think, this is an advantage. So I always have felt that being female in an area that's male is an advantage. The flip to that would be if you're a male nurse, see it as an advantage, not as a disadvantage. So I was able to call people up who might be, when I was visiting my family in Portland, I would call up some of the groups that were around Portland that I knew and say, I'm coming to see you, can I stop in? And that's how we got our first Kaiser sale, because they had Kaiser in Portland.
So to bring it forward to, and again, I'm going to assume, I don't know, how many people are using Epic right now in the audience? Okay. How many people are using, so like I would say 2/3 went up. How many are using my chart? And almost every hand is going up.
Could I comment on that?
Yes.
I heard someone say, why do we need Epic? We have my chart.
Yeah. So I will just say, in full disclosure, I use it. I think it's terrific. I think there are a lot of issues. I did the first fellowship in medical computing back in the early 80s because there was no one I was interested in it. And so I had to learn, data structures using Pascal. I went down to take Gail Kaiser's course at Columbia University, and it was the hardest course I ever took. But I learned about some of the challenges that you had to deal with, which are you're dealing with this, a database that's growing and growing and growing, and it has to have certain standards. There's a national standard format standard that each state uses a different type of coding and electronic handshaking to do electronic claims, but it's not one thing, even though it's a national format, they're all different state to state. And then how do you create the handshaking between other systems who want to connect, and that people want to do their own coding? So at NYU Langone Health, we have a whole medical informatics group, and people making their own stuff. And they want to be able to hook into Epic, and that is no easy task. So I want to start with, I actually reached out to the people at NYU who, and you know them, you talk with them, because we were on the phone, and I found out something that I didn't know, and I confess I should have known. So at least I'll tell everybody in the room, but I've been a doctor for, I can't believe it, for 41 years. And I'm an internist, I'm a dinosaur, even though I do GI, I do internal medicine. And I just found out that if you're on Propecia, which is a medicine for hair loss, whether it's 1 milligram or 5 milligram, it lowers the PSA, the prostate-specific antigen, by about 50%. So if you have somebody who has a PSA of 1.6 and it goes to 2.7, that's actually 3.2 going to 5.4, and then you might say, hey, we got to really do close follow-up. I did not know that. A friend of mine actually was a victim of this because his internist didn't know, and he ended up having prostate cancer, and maybe it should have been worked up earlier. So I went to we talked about maybe making that an Epic feature. Our people said, well, wait, actually, maybe that's something we do, and then plug in. So talk about, we now have 20 years of data that we've collected. What do we do with it, and what have you already done with it? Especially the pandemic stuff is so interesting.
Well, I think there's a couple things there. One is the data, and one is the technology for doing what they were doing. So we have something, Care Companion we call it, where organizations can put in what they've created clever to share with everybody else. And they do it 2 ways. I would say 90% of them put it in at no charge just to help take care of people, and maybe 10% put it in and charge for it. But in either way, it's trying to get the value that you created to everyone else in the country.
Who would, in the case of the PSA, because we talked about this, say, well, wait a second, maybe when you order a PSA or get the result of it, there's a little warning that comes up, and the transaction analysis, and the little birdie sitting over on your shoulder and says, hey, just so you know, you probably know that, and you have to figure out how you're talking to people so they don't get offended, but here's a little warning signal. Is that you who does that, or is that like NYU would do it and then plug in? Who does that?
That we would do. We would put that in there, because otherwise they're changing the basic code And when they get a new release, it's going to wipe it out if we don't put it in. So sometimes people do put it in, but they don't like to because then they know the next upgrade wipes it out.
So aside from people can read your notes and all that, and by the way, I do have one thing that one negative that I think has happened with Epic and other systems, which is there's the ability to do bracket and then past medical history, and it'll get sucked into a note. So you have people sucking in other people's data, right, without maybe not totally going it over themselves. They have this great note, but especially in the emergency room, it'll come back to me. What happened? What happened? There's a lot of data in there, but where's the impression? I'm not sure what happened. The person came in with abdominal pain, and I thought it was this, but then maybe it's that, and we'll have to see. But that's sort of gotten buried a little bit by the fire hose of data that it seems like there's a lot.
So it's still there, but you can't find it because there's too much?
I think in reality, what happens is people know that they have to write this note. They're very busy. There's a lot of pressure, and they don't write the impression. One of my mentors, Jay Meltzer, you'd go to his note, and you'd see it. Literally, you're in his head. He's telling you what he's thinking. And I think that has gotten lost with just everything, data getting sucked in. It's just all the data, labs, blah, blah, blah. It says, wow, I've written this incredible note. But what are you thinking?
It's funny. My husband's a pediatrician, and he said the shortest note he ever saw was about a transplant from overseas. It said, transplant failed, did another. And that was it.
That's so good. And then,
yeah.
But
so what was your question?
So the question is, you have all this data.
Yeah.
Obviously, the reason why for my PSA question is, aside from reading the handwriting, I want to be able to be, interacting with my patient, and then she or he is saying, and by the way, now you may know about ambient and other systems where the iPhone is in front of you and you're absolutely able to look at the patient, because it's a famous cartoon where the patient's over there and I'm looking at the computer. I don't like to look at your cholesterol. The person has 8 arrows through them. Just look at the patient. But it says, I'm from Lyme, Connecticut, and about a couple of weeks ago I got, or Mystic, Connecticut, and maybe not so obvious, and I got this rash, and I'm not feeling so well, and I have some aches and pains, and maybe a little thing comes up on the computer saying, think about Lyme disease, or the thing that my fantasy is about 3 years ago, a woman I've known 30 years burst into the office, and she said, "Hi." I said, "What's the matter?" And she burst into tears. Her whole life was falling apart. And when she stopped crying, she said, "How did you know?" And I said, "It's too big of a high." And after I finished, she left, I'm patting myself on the back, and then I thought, that was really obvious. What am I missing? What subtle body language am I missing? What subtle differences in tone of voice? Could a system say, based on the voice pattern of the last 10 interactions, you may consider inquiring about anxiety or other stuff, body language, how you doing? Fine. So
AI would have trouble with that.
Yeah, well, if it was video. So tell me what you're doing with the data. We have 16 minutes left, and I think this is the real, looking forward. Tell us about what you did with the pandemic, really good stuff, and then what it looks like to be a doctor in 5 years. That's where we're heading to.
Okay, so let me write this down. What to do with the data.
The cosmos, just so they get a little amuse-bouche. We want your bouche to be amused. And so if you start with a little sort of like what you've already done, like for example, they were able to find out that people were not coming in for their screening tests.
Well, the really big thing during the pandemic was that we found out that this was the CEO of Ochsner called up and said, "Judy, we can't get ventilators because New York has them all. But we're putting people on their sides or prone on their stomachs, and we think they're living better." And so immediately we went to the data and we looked at the death rates on ventilators, and they were way too high. And so we wrote that up, got that out right away, and we were told that the next day across the country, people did not put the patients who came in with COVID on ventilators unless they really needed them. And people have told us we probably saved tens of thousands of lives.
It was,
putting
yeah,
it out.
no, that was beautiful. And I was on the COVID wards in April of 2020 when it was in New York City. Everybody died. I mean, it was horrendous. And there's been some historical revisionism about like how bad it was. It was really bad. And so things like this, real time, not 5 years later when somebody writes, real time.
The other thing that I think is kind of neat is fentanyl. Fentanyl was studied was responsible for 45% of the deaths from overdose, but only 5% of the time was it being tested for. So we got that out too, and maybe you've noticed that the fentanyl deaths have greatly decreased. They never mention Epic, but I keep thinking every time I read that, I think we had a piece of that.
Yeah. And we liked the medications that can reverse the overdose have played a big role with that too. So think we've got 4 minutes and 22, 21, 20. No pressure. Give us in 4 minutes, what does it look like to be a physician or a healthcare provider? I'm always very careful on air to say clinician, healthcare provider. It's not just doctor, and especially nurses who are, the first thing I say to the medical students, because I talk to them in the first year, is when a nurse calls you at 3 a.m. and says the patient doesn't look good, that is the end of the conversation. You do not spend the next 15 minutes talking them out of their instincts, even if they can't quite perfectly, communicate the exact reason. So tell me about being a doctor or a healthcare provider in 5 years.
Well, what we're doing now, of course, is putting a lot of AI into the software, so it's helping the doctor do things. Some of the things it's doing is when the doctor makes a diagnosis, it's doing a diagnosis check. So we have about 300 million patients, a little over 300 million patients in the database that we call Cosmos that we could look at and try to figure out for other patients, say it was you, like you, we found 37,500 patients in that database, very similar to many of the things that represent you. And here are the diagnoses that other providers gave. The one that was used, that that I, the doctor, used for you, the patient, was used 0.3% of the time. Here's the ones that was used 20%, 40%, et cetera. So that will help the doctor decide, should he or she change it or should they stick with it? You
slipped in something that is really important in the middle. Doctors like you, so Bayesian statistics, like if I'm in New York and somebody comes in with an arm that's broken, it'll put up a different set of diagnoses than somebody in the Midwest who might have fallen off a tractor or whatever. It's literally, number one might be gunshot in New York, and maybe elsewhere it's something else. So that's really interesting that that's being taken into account.
The other thing that we're doing is called best care choices for my patient. And so again, we're looking at those 37,000 very similar to the patient. And let's say it's something to do with blood pressure. We can look at the different drugs that were given, how long it took to get the blood pressure back, and what the incidence of stroke was, what the incidence of heart attack was, et cetera. And you could see this one was the quickest to get back, but this one took another month or two, but it was better, et cetera, to give the doctor and the patient the information to discuss what should be the best for this patient. And when we do studies on the data too, we're looking at 300 million. So many studies run clinical trials that are 100 patients.
Yeah.
And it's with the 300 million, I think, that we get actually better answers.
And of course, where is it incredibly important is in the emergency room with sepsis, which is famously an area that we miss, and it's a disaster. And I know that that's part of protocols
we
now.
do
Where,
sepsis.
Somebody goes in and their respiratory rate's up, their pulse is up, their O2 is down, and various lab data and sepsis protocol. And hopefully the person has it in their head, but if not.
The problem with sepsis is that there's so many things on that patient typically. It's very hard for a human being to put it all together and figure out this person's going to be septic soon. And so I tell our customers, our health systems, I don't care what sepsis system you use, but for goodness sake, use something, because it's more than the human brain can really deal with. So we have a good one. Doesn't cost you anything. You can use it. If you want to use another, use it, but don't not use something.
Last question before the Q&A. Is there something where you looking back and, gosh, I wish I had done that differently, or I wish I knew the answer to this, because that would really, like, what right now is in your brain going, what are you wrestling with?
Well, the only thing I wish we had done earlier was the ambient listening, that we waited until the software that was available to do it on could be done quickly, because the groups that did it took several years to
You're
do.
talking about ambient?
Yeah,
Yeah, so this is the iPhone listening to your conversation.
That's right.
Putting it, transcribing it.
it took them a long time to do because the technology wasn't there. We waited till the technology was there, but I wish we had gone sooner.
And at least have the hooks in so
Yeah.
that you can handshake electronically. And anything?
We do it now.
Yeah, no, I know that everybody has there's a bunch of different
Yeah.
forms of it, and I know Microsoft has a form, and you have a form. Anything right now that you're noodling and thinking, I can't quite get it. E to the I pi equals what again? -1. So anything like that?
Nope.
Nothing. Okay, so it's all solved. Well, it's been a nice seminar. All right, so we're going to have this gentleman in the white cap. I'm told that somebody's going to go around with a microphone. Has everybody heard me, by the way? I was supposed to talk up, but in the back row, were you able to hear me? If not, I was amazing. If you did, well, sorry. Who's giving the mic out? You got it, okay.
As a practicing clinical psychologist,
Eat the mic, okay?
as a practicing clinical psychologist, I applaud you for democratizing medical records. It's lasted, it took way too long. My concern is that I'll have patients come in the office and say, I just looked at my chart and I read here. I started Googling it. I think I might have cancer. I think this. Your thoughts on giving lay people clinical information without a physician interpreting it?
Well, it's interesting because I think there is a federal law.
The Cures Act.
That we have to give that data to the patient as soon as it's available. Many patients say they want it. What we're going to do, though, to get around the problem of those who don't want to see it until the doctor has reviewed it, because some of it can be pretty difficult, is that we're going to ask the patient, this isn't done yet, but we're programming it, to ask the patient, do you want to see the data right away, or do you want to wait until the doctor has reviewed it? And it will be the patient's decision, which then will override that the government says we have to get it out right away.
Yeah, that's key. And I've had patients, who've gotten really bad diagnoses and one of them is a friend of mine. I'm sitting there refreshing the pathology screen, and so is she. And she got her breast cancer diagnosis 12 seconds before I did. And she called me because we were buddies. And I said, you got it first. I wanted to see it first. Let's go down here first. So we got the mic here, and then I'll go back there to the gentleman with the sunglasses on his head. I'm supposed to describe people. The woman with the winning personality, over here.
Hi, I'm Andrea Downing. I'm a patient advocate and an advocate for people getting access to their data. So there's a pro and con to that. My question for you, patients are exercising the rights of access to data through FHIR. There's a lot happening right now with the health tech ecosystem and interoperability. That is a good thing, but the second you exercise your right of access through HIPAA, you lose your rights when you go into third-party apps. My question is, how might we safely support patient communities, meet them where they are because we know they want the access to data, and educate them on what is safe and secure as a security
That's
researcher?
a good question.
Yeah, and I'm one of the folks at EPIC who goes to Washington, D.C. sort of regularly to talk to the people in Congress. And one of the things we say all the time is any organization that has access to your data needs to follow the rules of HIPAA, because they don't. So right now, what happens, which is terrible, is that when a health system gets its data stolen by an evil third party, the health system gets fined. They're the victim, not the villain. That's ridiculous. So we keep saying that to the government. They haven't changed anything yet, though. Individually, they all agree with us, but they haven't changed anything.
Gentleman in the back there with the sunglasses.
Test. Good. Judy,
Yeah.
a three-part question.
Oh boy.
It's going to be fun, though.
Quick, if it's three-part quick, but
It's a quickie. Favorite feature of Epic that was never released? Number one. Number two, was it hard to get your husband to use Epic in his practice? And number three, user groups. Are user groups driving significant product roadmap now or not, and why?
User groups, repeat that.
Are they
please.
driving development and
Oh,
features,
okay.
you know, requests for proposals and stuff?
Okay, your first one was never
What was the
released?
feature that was never released? A
I'm
feature
sure
that
there
was-
must be, but I can't think of any.
Yeah, favorite feature that was never released. Well, if it was her
Well,
favorite, it was released. Okay,
okay.
second question.
Okay, my husband. So I thought that was pretty funny, actually. He took it very seriously. He worked for an FQHC, and he took it very seriously that he was going to do a good job at learning to use a computer. So he practiced typing and took Mavis Beacon Teaches Typing. He took various classes on how to use a computer. And then when it was time for him to go the very first day to use the computer, I saw him standing by the front door waving his arms like that, which I had never seen ever. Now, this is a guy who's an athlete. He's he'll bike hundreds of miles uphill and downhill in a day, and he loves races. And so I couldn't figure out why he's doing this, and I asked him, "What's wrong?" He said, "I'm scared." I said, "Why are you scared? What are you scared of?" He said, "I'm afraid I'm going to look foolish in front of my patients." And I thought it was particularly interesting because I think FQHC patients are particularly grateful that they have a good doctor taking care of them. I said, "You'll do fine." So he was gone for the day, he came back, I came home from work. I said, "How'd you do?" He said, "Bad." And I said, "You'll get better." So then he said, "How come the other doctor who he shares an office with can look at the patient, type, do everything just fine, and he can't?" I said, "You'll get there." Eventually he did, but that was the answer to your question number 2. And question number 3 was about user groups. What we have is specialty boards for many of our different products. We have maybe 50 different specialty boards, and the board members get voted on by our customers, and they help define the direction of the product that they're on the specialty board. So if they're OR, they help define what OR should do, etc. Very helpful to us. And we don't want to do that ourselves. The other thing I should mention is that our staff, our software development, and our QM, quality management staff, are required to go on what we call immersion trips. They're required to go out, meet with customers, watch how their system is being used. They go into the OR, they faint, they're told, "Get up and keep going." And that's what they do. And they learned 2 things. One, they learn what the software really can and can't do and how to make it better. And 2, they learn to care. They come back, and when someone calls and says they have a problem, they care because they've been there. So,
Over here, and then after that, over here. This woman over here on the front, and then this woman on the right.
Hi, Judy, you've always said that you wouldn't go public. Can you give us an idea of your thinking and what are the advantages of staying private?
well, I think the people who run public companies have to make decisions that are based on what their stock value will be at the end of the quarter. And if your decision is based instead on what's going to be important for the health system users. Now, what I thought was really interesting is we had some health system customers visit us, and they asked our senior staff about EBITDA. How many of you know EBITDA? Well, our staff said, "What does that mean?" And I thought that was a really good answer. Then it was explained to them because it's a financial thing. And they said, "We have no idea." So it's not something, we say you can't be stupid about the money, but it's not something we focus on. Funny though, I think you do a better job when you don't focus on it than when you do. I don't know if that answers your question.
That was, and then it was over here, right?
Thank you. So my name is Laura. I'm a pediatrician, but work at the intersect between health and education and public health. And I've been following the challenges of data and interoperability and intersectional between sectors. And I'm interested, especially at a conference like this, where so much of what we talk about is, things like 80% of traditional healthcare outcomes are determined by things outside of the healthcare system.
Yeah, right.
What do you see coming, or what are the opportunities, especially with adding AI, and where you can factor in all of what was seen as the adjacencies to healthcare, sleep and physical activity and nutrition and mental health and things? Do you see those opportunities? Because I've seen in the past social determinants of health factors getting PDF scanned into an electronic medical record, but not to that next level of integration.
I think it was Finland that required us to do a whole system on social determinants of health, on social care, basically. And so we have that with our software now. Yes, I think that's where you're going to see a lot of new development going that direction.
I see we actually have more time than I thought, now 9 minutes and 26 seconds. And I wanted to turn this last 9 minutes, it's gravy, to something that I think, and it's going to be an interaction with the audience, which, as I told you before, I was involved with the Empathy Project. And actually, Maura Minsky, our director of the Empathy Project, is right here. I'd love you to reach out to her and connect with her about this issue that I'm about to talk to you about. And our website is empathyproject.com. Not empathy.com, but empathyproject.com. It turns out that when you think about being a clinician 5 years from now, right now there's data showing that the models show that the AI systems perform better than humans in diagnosis, and that adding physicians degrades them. So there's a bunch of studies that are now confirming this. So it's not separately, but actually in addition. So AI plus clinician degrades them. I have a bias here, of course. The AI can't do this. The AI can't look you in the eye. The AI can't have the hairs on the back of their neck stand up. What does it mean to be a physician? I'm going to go back to that question 5 years from now. You must be thinking about this, obviously, about when you think about the features that you're putting in there, it's great on so many levels, but what is it going to mean in terms of being a clinician 5 years from now?
We've been trying to give that a lot of thought, too. And, of course, we don't have an accurate answer because we don't know what it is. But what we hear people say is that the physician plus the AI is better than either of them alone. And I hope that will be. I have also heard people say that they're telling some of the new physicians going into medical school, go into something that's going to use your hands, because anything that's going to use your brain is going to be replaced with AI. I don't know that I agree with that, but I've heard them say that, because then they're going to have robots that replace the hands too. So I don't know. I have a Tesla, and I like to put it on auto drive. And it was nighttime. I was going home. It was dark, and I was going under the overpass. And I was probably going 5 miles, 8 miles over the speed limit. And suddenly...
You were driving or it was driving?
Both.
Okay.
And suddenly the Tesla slowed down. And I said, "Tesla, what are you doing?" Yeah, I did say that. And so it slowed down. And then it speeded up. It slowed down. And then I noticed there was a police car hidden in the dark there. And then it speeded up again. And it does, after it got past, it did that twice. And so I thought, that's going to be what happens with the doctors and the AI. The AI will figure things out that the doctor would not have been aware of, like with sepsis. But there'll be more things, and that will help the doctor.
I imagine it might suggest, obviously, data acquisition. One of the things I did earlier was literally from 82 to 90 was create an electronic textbook of medicine. We ended up with 20,000 structured pieces of information. We called it Cardinal Topics in Medicine. We went to sell it. Robert Maxwell had been our publisher. He died. Nobody, we brought all these things, 20,000 pieces, and they said, it's too big, how are you going to display it? And we said, is this thing coming? Anyway, we folded, it was a Columbia project, and then Up to Date came, and then Burton Rose laughed at me at a conference. He goes, you were too early. I said, but this is all to say that one of my fantasies was to hold it up, and first day of medical school, here's all of medical knowledge. Relax. But you're still going to need to know anatomy and physiology, histology, but we're not going to give you kudos for regurgitating back the 10 causes of whatever. We will give you kudos for speaking to the patient's sister-in-law who tells you that they just went on a trip to Sardinia where they were bit by a scorpion, or whatever it is that the computer can't do. And I wonder if that's one of the things that, when you think about the partnership, who's riding who? Are we the jockey on top of the horse? Is the horse on top of us?
One of the things that the computer can do that the individual can't, which I think is very interesting, is what we call lookalikes. So if you see a rare patient that you have, well, I shouldn't say rare patient. You see a patient who you have no idea what's going on. You've never seen these problems before. You ask your colleagues, they haven't either. We could quickly look at the whole US and find the 2 patients in the country who are similar, and then connect the caregivers. We've done that now, I think, about 10,000 times. And the first time we did it was with a group in Chicago, where the one match was in Dartmouth in Connecticut. And so the caregivers were delighted, the providers were delighted to be tied together and try to figure out how to take better care of the patient. So I thought that was good.
That is good. I had a patient once who was dying. We didn't know why. Then his wife got sick, and it turned out that they had a place in Connemara, Ireland, and they had eaten watercress that she picked from the stream, and it had been infected by a parasite. And all of the people in Ireland know that you don't do that. All of the watercress is in glass houses, but there had only been 2 cases in the United States. One in Calabasas and one here, and it was just from luck that I sort of tripped over this diagnosis. But I can imagine that kind of thing would be just...
One of the things I've often thought is weird is the PDR, Physician's Desk Reference, that the one in Canada is different from the one in the US, is different from the one in South America. So you could look at the same medication, and in one place it will say never use, that's in Canada. In another place it will say use under these circumstances, that's in the US, and another place it will say can be used for anyone with these conditions. And so I'm hoping that AI will help that to not be different like that.
So along those lines, or add on to that, what I'm doing these days with AI is I'll pose something to one AI, get an answer, then I'll present that to another AI, get an answer. Hey, what do you think of this? And they have the battle of the AIs. What is your handshaking with other AI systems? Like, I can imagine it would be, I have to take the data, I say, oh, okay, and then I put it into whatever, open evidence or whatever it is. Do you have that, are you thinking about doing that electronically where?
Well, we're doing our own AI.
Your own AI, but how about the rest of the world? Like, using other people's, and have the battle of the AIs and come back with some suggestion.
I don't know what we're
Is that too complicated
to
even think about?
Yeah, I don't know what we're doing that way.
It's like less hallucination.
But I'll give you one that happened to us, and this is something I can't quite understand. We have Alexa. How many of you have Alexa? So we order food on Alexa. All you do is say, Alexa, add milk. And milk goes on the grocery list. It's very helpful because who's ever going for the groceries can see the latest on Alexa, even if it was done a minute before at home. So we have a dog, and we buy a piece of beef maybe once a month, cook it, chop it into pieces, freeze them, and those are her snacks. So I said to my husband, we need to order more. So he said to Alexa, add dog meat. Alexa said, I've placed your order, but I must say I am uncomfortable with it.
Oh my gosh.
So AI with a sense of humor.
Oh my gosh. I order plan and I order a test and it goes, really? Really? Well, that is a perfect way to end. I think it's a lot to chew on. This whole discussion couldn't be more interesting. Again, anybody who has an interest in empathy and in empathy colliding and interacting with computers and what the future looks like, please come up front, the whole team. Debbie Rubin, Maura Minsky, who's the head of the Empathy Project, and Jen Adams, who's the head of this, the Frankfurt head of the Center for Empathy in Medicine. I would really love you to talk with her if you have an interest. Thank you, Judy. You prefer Judy?
Yeah, Judy.
Now I find out as it ends. How do you want to be called?
My middle name is Ruth. So if you take that away, I'm ruthless.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. That was terrific.